It was kind of surreal to see a capsule come down in the Pacific with parachutes on. I didn't think any of us would ever see that again. What do you guys think about the fact that we're going back to the stack configuration and the manner that we're doing it through private companies, supposedly? Even though I find it funny because last time I checked, private companies built the Saturn V and the LEM. Yes. But anyway, I'm just curious, what do you guys think?
Who wants to tackle that one?
Well, I'll take a shot at that if you don't mind. Ken, you bring up SpaceX and their great achievements, which is very, very significant in this day and age when we're doing nothing. But I don't know, I think I worked on Orion for a little while, and that was called Apollo on steroids, because it was Apollo just bigger. And now we're back to mini Apollo with the configuration, and probably a long ways down the road in the future. Shape of things to come. Winged spacecraft are probably a thing of the past until we get really further down the road. But this whole aspect of it kind of reminds me of where we are in America in our space program. I don't mean to take anything away from what Elon Musk has accomplished with SpaceX. It's significant. But think of about 45 years ago when the headlines, the banner headlines were, America lands a man on the moon. And what America is doing today is delivering underwear to orbit. And think about it.
Dick,
think about where we are and where we're going.
what they did, and I don't want to take anything away from a company getting started, it was a nice accomplishment for them. It's the same kind of task, launching a vehicle, rendezvousing, docking remotely, coming back and returning it that the Russians did in 1970 and 1971. Very similar kind of mission, and I'm one of those. I don't know how much it's shared, but I'm one of those that thinks that the biggest mistake that NASA's ever made was the cancellation of the shuttle orbiters, which I believe was the safest, most complex flying machine ever designed and built, and I think we should still be flying it and just addressing the cost issues with it.
Well, I'm going to take exception. I think the shuttle was a design looking for an accident to happen. I think it has not centerline thrust. If you lose one solid, you've got a problem. I think there are a lot of things that could be done with the shuttle, but I only want to make one point about it, and that is that the shuttle can take so much into orbit, go to the space station and deliver stuff. One Saturn V could take as much as 8 shuttle flights. And we talk about the efficiency of the shuttle, but you could take a Saturn V and throw it all away, put 250,000 pounds in orbit at the space station, and you'd be a lot further ahead than using the shuttle, in my opinion.
And in fact, the next panel we're going to have after you guys is the Skylab panel. When they did exactly that, they put a space station in orbit with one Saturn V launch. Very good. Next question, please.
And I know Fred's been depicted in Apollo 13. Do you think that a film should be, there's been so many books written about you guys, but do you think a major Hollywood movie should be made about the real Apollo, the full Apollo program? And if so, apart from Fred, who would you want to have play you in that film?
I'm sorry, I missed it. Should Hollywood make a movie about the whole Apollo program?
The whole of the Apollo program. I mean, it's an amazing story. It's never been done. You've had Apollo 13, but
They can't do it.
Yeah, my problem is Hollywood is, it's a business, and they want a entertaining, when they make a movie, they want it to be entertaining, and so all of y'all and a lot of other people that aren't even interested in space will buy tickets, and they'll get a return on their investment. So they really, Hollywood could not do a good job on really.
But if they could, who would you have?
They just couldn't do it. They cannot. If they build a documentary, it won't sell tickets. So the real good story of what I consider nuts and bolts story of the Apollo program, Hollywood couldn't do. Discovery Channel, maybe History, if they got into it, could produce it. That'd really be it'd be a long series. But no, as far as the latter question, who plays me, I don't have a choice. I think Jim had a choice. He wanted Harrison Ford to play his role. But Tom Hanks isn't bad either.
There's a mini-series I could recommend. Okay, thank you.
Thanks. My question is primarily to Dick and Al. Dick, you mentioned the training to come home alone. Curious, what was in the event of emergency, you couldn't get up very far, what were you trained, how far down were you trained to go? And I know it's hypothetical, but how far do you think you would have pushed that envelope to get your crewmen?
I missed the very last part of the contingency operations in lunar orbit. The criteria in training was that obviously they had to get off the surface of the moon, but the criteria was 10-mile clear lunar orbit. In other words, 10 miles above the surface in a clear orbit. The capability of the command module and procedurally was to be able to go rescue them. Go in and be active participant instead of the passive participant in a rendezvous and docking and go down and get them. The design of the lunar module, if I remember correctly, and Fred, correct me if I'm wrong, after the ascent stage lifted off, I think the lifetime of the ascent stage was something like 9, 10, 12-hour time frame. So the procedure normally would be to rendezvous and dock within, say, 2 hours. And an extra time, an extra pad was to adjust the orbits, coincidental orbits, to be able to rendezvous and dock. So those procedures were in the procedure book, had been trained for, and the procedure was, and hopefully fortunately we never had to use it, was to be able to rescue them if they were in a 10-mile orbit.
Al, you want to add anything?
Well, the only thing I'd add to that is what Dick just said is, the same rules that we operated under. The only difference was we went down below 10 miles before they landed. And so we got pretty close. We were in a very high inclination orbit, 28 degrees at the landing site. I had to fly over a 15,000-foot mountain into the landing site. We ended up at, my friend and co-author Francis Frisch has all the numbers. He knows them better than I do, but I think it was 46,000 feet, was it, Francis? And so we're about 9 miles above the lunar surface at one point. You see awfully small rocks.
And you guys, when you went to bed, you'd already done the maneuver to go down to the low parallel.
Well, we were in that particular orbit the night before, and because of the gravitational constants of the moon, the orbit degraded overnight, and we were down to about 46,000 feet the next morning. And I woke up and pulled the cover off the window, looking out in front of us, and I was looking up at the top of the mountain, and I thought, oh Jesus, what's going on? So I called Houston and said, hey, and Houston came right back to me and said, boy, I wish you're glad you woke up and called us. And why? Well, you're getting a little close to that mountain. And I thought, well, I guess I can see it. So,
that was nothing more than high key and flame-on approach.
That was a high key. So we very quickly got Dave and Jim going, and I got back into a circular orbit.
Okay, who's next?
Question for Fred Haise. Once you realized that you were in trouble on your flight, was there any possibility that one of you could do a spacewalk and identify what the damage was?
Was there any? No, that was never considered. As far as when the command module went down, it would have been I guess you could hypothesize a case. We only had 2 backpacks, and in the LEM, 2 hoses, of course, command module down. But we didn't have really the proper handholds and things on that spacecraft like they did later to go back to the sim bay. So you'd have been, you probably couldn't reach the area you wanted to get to anyway. And you know, if you have an explosion and not a very big repair kit on board, you probably couldn't have done anything anyway. So I don't think anybody ever considered that.
Yeah, the only guys who did that were the guys in the movie Maroon, right? Richard Crenna out there hanging off the end of the service module. Did you see the movie before you flew?
Yeah, Jim and I went to see that movie in Merritt Island, in fact, not too long before the flight.
Did you also see Capricorn 3? That would have been a good one for every guy who was going to make a flight.
When you're paired with a bunch of guys going through flight training, I understand how stressful it gets, and at times levity is the one thing that kind of helps relieve all that stress. What is the greatest prank that you guys have ever had pulled on you, or that you were witness to with any of the guys that you know?
Did you all hear the question? You want me to repeat it? What was the greatest prank that you guys ever pulled or had pulled on you? Fredo, I'm thinking of the movie that you guys made for Apollo 16 regarding a certain orange juice problem.
Yeah, that wasn't a prank, though. That really happened. To Charlie and John, I guess they salted them with potassium. Now, a prank I played on the Sutex. This is a mixed audience, but Troy Stewart was one of the Sutex I like to kid around with a lot. And even in training at the Cape, when we were out on the fake rock pile, we wore our diapers. So I had actually another suit tech support this prank, and I had pre-rigged a diaper with some chocolate pudding in the back of the shower room there. And got back in and went into the shower room, and I yelled at Troy. I said, "Here, Troy," and threw it to him.
When it comes to pranks, I can't isolate a prank because any of you that knew Wally knew that Wally was playing gotchas all the time. I can't even single out one gotcha. Well, wait, I take it. He did have one gotcha. He played that gotcha on all of you people. And that was during the mission. Everybody, I can't tell you how many times in the last 2 days I was asked about the cold I had in space. And I have to tell you, there's only one guy that ever had a real cold in space, and that was Wally Schirra. And the whole world believes that we had a cold throughout that place. We did all take the pills that the flight surgeon said help you, but I tell you, that was the biggest gotcha that Wally ever pulled on anybody. And those of you who knew Wally, you knew that if Wally had a cold, everybody had a cold.
Well, that's good to hear, Walt, because we were actually wondering how you guys got along after Wally used up all the Kleenex.
Yeah. And it really is kind of interesting because I don't remember how much Kleenex we had on board, but when Wally got the cold, and he was stayed under the couch for a while there, and he started going through the Kleenex. And I remember Don and I kind of whispered to each other, says, "We got to tell him something about this." And so Don finally mentioned it to him. He says, "Wally, can't you do more than just blow your nose once on the Kleenex?" He would blow his nose and throw the Kleenex away. And we thought, well, we might catch a cold too, and there's not going to be any Kleenex left.
On Apollo 12, there were no pranks. Pete Conrad wouldn't allow it. We were nose to the grindstone kind of guys.
We're getting into revisionist history now. What about those beanies that you pulled out? Pete's had a little propeller on his that you pulled out after a TLI.
What about those?
And then there was the giant baseball cap that he was going to put on top of his space helmet.
No, Fredo reminded me of the pranks that weren't played. After the fecal containment bags were used, we watched everybody closely to make sure they were not put back in the pantry.
You reminded me of another one. It was a very unintentional prank, but we had to save those fecal containment bags, of course, and about the third day, something like that, one of us, I can't even remember who, was having our dessert, chocolate, and we recomposed the chocolate out there. The bag broke, and you didn't want to have chocolate floating around. And finally, Wally says, well, hell, stick it in one of those fecal containment bags. So we put it in fecal containment bags, filed them away, and when we came back, we were part of a study on consumption, energy in and energy out. So we had to bring back all the food we hadn't eaten and any waste material we had. And I can remember this, that we got on board the carrier, and we were getting ready to get off the carrier to fly back to the Cape. The only other thing besides Wally and Don and I on there was this huge bag of fecal material, very important science. Got it all back. We never paid any attention to it, except we wondered why it was going back with us. And so we get back there, and about a couple days later, we get a call from, who was that lady?
Rita Rapp.
Rita Rapp.
The food
Yeah, she was the food lady. She was doing all this study. And we get a call from Rita, and she says, we're missing a chocolate pudding. We wonder where it is. And we says, well, we had to think about it for a minute. Said, oh yeah, we put that in one of the fecal bags. So next time I saw Rita, she says, oh, thank you. Says, I had to go through every single fecal bag, and the last one was the one.
It's always the last place to look, isn't it? You know, this really makes me feel like we're going to we've really lost something with the old Apollo system. Okay.
Well, I'm not sure how I feel about the transition of going from fecal containment to me, but on the side, since there's been a lot of talk this weekend about...
A little closer to the mic.
There's been a lot of talk this weekend about the unfortunate nature of our current space program in the future. So we are now appointing you, magically, in charge of the future of our country's space program with no reasonable constraint. What would you want to do? What would be your priority?
Did you all hear the question? What would be your priority for the future space program if you guys were king?
Well, I think I would like to see the Orion continue. To me, commercialization is just another name for what we've always done. NASA's never built anything. We paid people to build stuff. And Orion is going along pretty well. And the Space Launch System, start back to taking our astronauts on our spacecraft to the International Space Station. Probably the next step. After that, want some forward vision, whether you commit to an asteroid mission or commit to a lunar lander. That would be my preference, is building a station on the moon if I were going to make a decision. It's going to start a space station.
Well, I've never been a real fan of the return to the moon, except now I find myself very supportive of it because it looks like it's the only really outreach step that we could make. My vision of the future is we have to be, and I'm not sure if it's possible to ever get back to this, to be reaching out to the real impossible. We should be shooting for like Mars out there. I have not been able to rationalize any real benefit of going back to the moon, except if it truly is a step on the way to Mars. I can find no true gain to come out of going to an asteroid other than just the experience of flying the vehicle. You might as well be heading it up. This society needs to have a vision out there of doing the impossible and a willingness to do it if we're ever going to inspire young people again.
Just a quick comment on it. if you truly believe that survival of the species is the most important thing we have facing us, then the space program is the initial step to get us to a place where we can survive. So I would say that's a long-term program. I would put all my money into technology development. I believe that the technology that came out of the space program and got factored into commercial products is the thing that's made this country so great in the last 30 years. We're losing that today, and I think that primarily we need to put a lot of money into technology development, into long-range programs, and we need to develop propulsion systems that are a generation ahead of where we are today, because that's the only way we're going to get there. And in the meantime, I think we've got to have short-term goals such as going to the moon and going to Mars, but the real long-term goal, survival of the species, and that means we've got to go someplace else to live eventually. It might be millions of years, but it's going to happen.
I'll be very succinct in my comment.
Wait,
And the comment is to explore. We're not exploring.
Fredo, you get the last word on this subject.
Yeah, I agree with Al. You know, if you want to look long range, and I don't know if it's a million years or what it is, with the exception, I think you got to keep doing the baby steps. The baby steps are going to the moon, going to Mars. Within our solar system, one thing I disagree with Al is I would like to have continued not the current shuttle, but to continue. If you look at aircraft, we build an aircraft that is an A model, and it's pretty good. And if you look at the F-86 we used in Korea, we built an A model. The F-86 was the F-86H model, because you keep improving. Most people don't realize I was on the source selection board for Shuttle, and all initial proposals came in. Shuttle was an all-metal aircraft. We used Columbian, Inconel X, a lot of titanium, and we ran into a weight problem very early on, and we chopped 25% out of the wing area. We blunted the crew cabin, we blunted the ohm spots into the F-payload bearings, and it became a much less of a glider. The L/D went down, the heating rates went up, and we went beyond the metallics. So fortunately, Lockheed, that had done work on this tile, saved our fanny with coming up with a tile solution that could be implemented to make it hack it. So and it was driven, really, the weight was driven by unrealistic design reference missions. We had 6 of them. 2 of them by the Air Force were particularly, Charlie, just not doable, really, but that drove cross range, put 600 pounds of special wiring in the vehicle, a lot of things like that. So it was kind of like the F-111 problem with too many requirements. But if you could rebuild it as a cheap vehicle orbit, a lot more automation, particularly in the ground processing. The congressman in Florida wouldn't like to hear it, but you got to do it with less people. Your big recurring cost on recurring flights is payroll. And so you've got to do a lot more automation and the ground processing to do it with less people. And of course, the more flights you fly per year to lay on that overhead also reduces that cost, but that's not unlimited. So that's what I'd like to proceed. I call it the baby steps. Al's right in the technology area. Clearly, we need a lot of work to figure out some better answer for propulsion if we're going to go very much further beyond our solar system. Whether warp drives out there somewhere, I don't know, but hopefully there'll be some breakthrough come through if we keep working it.
Yeah, I'm a little conscious of the time because I know Walt has to blast out of here. Oh, you're okay. All right, so you'll give me the high sign when he gets tense.